After moving out and buying my own place, I thought the distance would bring peace, a quiet break from years of tension. Instead, the rift between me and my family only deepened. What should have been a symbol of independence became a battlefield when they insisted that I hand the house over to my sister, Victoria. Their reasoning: she was starting a real family and needed it more. At first, I thought they were joking, but they weren't. They genuinely believed that I should just surrender the home Logan and I had worked so hard for. When I refused, they took legal action, dragging me through months of draining court hearings. In the end, they lost. The court ruled the property solely mine, leaving them with over $225,000 in legal debt. That victory should have brought relief, but it didn't. Instead, it left a bitter taste, a quiet ache that lingered long after the court documents were signed. I often catch myself wondering, do I need advice, or just someone to listen to what all this has done to me? Because the truth is, this wasn't just about a house, it was about a lifetime of feeling unwanted. From as far back as I can remember, love in my family felt conditional, if it existed for me at all. My sister Victoria, 4 years younger, seemed to have been born under a brighter star. My parents adored her from the start, doting on her every word and whim. She was the center of their world, the golden child, while I was the quiet afterthought, orbiting somewhere on the edge of their affection. The difference between us was always visible, especially during family events. I'll never forget last Christmas. Victoria unwrapped a brand new PlayStation 4, a gift I had dreamed of for years, while I sat nearby, holding a plain pack of white Walmart socks. It wasn't the gift itself that hurt, it was what it represented. As Victoria basked in the glow of her new gadget, surrounded by laughter and admiration, I felt invisible. That was hardly the first time. My family had long since stopped celebrating my birthday. The last time they even acknowledged it, I was 9 years old. Yet, when Victoria turned 18, they threw her an extravagant backyard bash, complete with professional catering, entertainers, and a trampoline. I wasn't invited. I only found out the day before, when I overheard them finalizing the menu. I tried not to let it break me. I focused on what I could control: my grades, my work ethic, my behavior. I never gave them a reason to be ashamed, but no matter how much I achieved, it wasn't enough to earn their warmth. Even now, as I celebrate my birthdays with college friends, there's always a pang in my chest. They make me feel appreciated in ways my family never did, but it's still not the same. Every year, as Victoria posts photos of her elaborate parties online, I'm reminded of what I missed, not the luxury, but the love. Victoria's arrival had changed everything. She was everything my parents wanted: vibrant, athletic, effortlessly social. And I was the quiet one, the dreamer who spent afternoons sketching or reading. When she was born, I thought she'd be my playmate, my little partner in crime, but instead, she became my rival without ever trying. As we grew older, she learned how to charm our parents to her advantage. When she broke the TV one summer afternoon, she pointed her finger at me, and they believed her instantly, even though I hadn't even been home. I was grounded for a month. My phone was confiscated. I remember standing there, stunned, while Victoria looked at me with an innocent shrug. It was the first time I realized that truth didn't matter in our house, favor did. After that, I withdrew. My room became my only refuge, though it felt like a prison compared to Victoria's. Hers was filled with sports trophies, string lights, and the latest gadgets. Mine was plain, almost barren. The difference was like a reflection of how we were valued. By the time I turned 20, I had stopped expecting anything from them. That birthday morning, I woke up to silence, no messages, no hugs, no acknowledgement that I even existed. The world outside my window carried on as usual, while inside, I quietly accepted that I was no longer part of the family narrative. That was the moment I decided to leave. Moving out was both terrifying and liberating. I found a shared apartment near my university and supported myself through freelance graphic design work. What started as a small side hustle grew into a full-fledged career. I poured everything into it: my time, my energy, my hope, and for the first time, I felt proud of myself. At 25, life surprised me again, this time, in a good way. I met Logan. He was thoughtful, ambitious, and grounded. Like me, he worked independently, managing social media for small businesses. We met through a project, and what started as casual collaboration turned into late-night talks, laughter, and shared dreams. With Logan, I felt something I'd never felt before: seen. He appreciated me not for what I did, but for who I was. He understood my silences, my insecurities, even the family wounds I tried to hide. Through his love, I learned what it meant to belong, not because of blood, but because of choice. Together, we built a life. We saved, planned, and dreamed of owning a home that was truly ours. When we finally found the perfect house, a beautiful 3-story suburban home, it felt like a fresh chapter. The day we signed the papers, I could barely hold back tears. But peace, it seemed, was something my family refused to let me have. A few days after we moved in, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. I ignored the first few calls, assuming they were pocket dials or guilt-driven check-ins. But when the calls kept coming, I finally picked up. My mother's voice was unusually sweet. They were in town, she said, and wanted to visit. Every instinct told me to say no, but against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe, deep down, I hoped they'd finally come to make amends. When the doorbell rang hours later, I opened it to find my parents standing there, with Victoria at their side and a tall man beside her. I soon learned his name was James, her fiancé, and that she was pregnant. No one had told me, not a word. I felt a cold wave of shock as they walked in like uninvited royalty. My mother chatted politely with Logan, pretending nothing was wrong. My father, on the other hand, scanned the house with a critical eye, muttering under his breath about how surprisingly nice it was for someone in our position. Then came the comment that shattered the fragile calm. He looked straight at me and said, "You know, this house is far too big for just you two. Victoria and James could really use the space now that they're expecting." For a moment, I couldn't even respond. My heart pounded. He wasn't asking, he was suggesting, as if my home was a resource to be redistributed at his discretion. When I didn't answer, Victoria smirked. "Yeah," she added casually, "you two don't even need this much room." That was it. Years of bottled pain, humiliation, and quiet endurance erupted all at once. My voice shook as I told them no, firmly. For the first time in my life, I reminded them the house was legally ours and that they had no right to dictate what we did with it. My father's expression hardened. "You should be grateful," he snapped. "We raised you, and this is how you repay us, by being selfish?" Selfish. The word burned through me like fire. A few hours later, Logan arrived to post my bail. His expression was a mixture of exhaustion, disbelief, and heartbreak. When we finally returned home, the house felt different, haunted by the echoes of shouting and shattered trust. Though I was physically free, I felt trapped in the wreckage of what had just unfolded. But the chaos didn't end there. My father, unwilling to accept defeat, took his bitterness to new heights. A week after the incident, a court summons arrived at our doorstep. My father was suing me for the ownership of the house, claiming that Victoria and her fiancé, Jameson, needed it more. Reading the papers, my hands trembled. The audacity was staggering. He was determined to take everything from me, my peace, my autonomy, my hard-earned independence. But I wasn't the same person they had once pushed around. I was ready to fight. I immediately hired a lawyer and began gathering every document that proved the house was legally mine: purchase agreements, bank statements, correspondence, everything. Yet, I also knew that this was about more than property. It was about years of manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional neglect that had poisoned my life. For once, I decided to expose it all. I collected old emails and text messages, evidence of my parents' controlling behavior and emotional abuse. Friends who had witnessed how I was treated agreed to testify. The process was draining, forcing me to relive moments I had buried deep within, the times I was blamed for things I didn't do, the endless comparisons to Victoria, the dismissals of my pain as overreacting. The courtroom became the final stage of our long-standing family drama. My father, dressed in his best suit, played the part of a loving parent, his tone polished and calm. Victoria sat beside him, her hand resting protectively on her pregnant belly, while Jameson put on an air of quiet support. They tried to paint me as ungrateful, selfish, and emotionally unstable. But my lawyer dismantled their story piece by piece. He laid out the facts, the timeline, the ownership documents, and finally, the years of emotional manipulation I had endured. The atmosphere in the courtroom grew heavy as text messages from my father were read aloud, messages where he berated me, mocked my achievements, and demanded that I do the right thing by giving the house to Victoria. As the weeks passed, my parents' facade began to crack. The judge saw through their pretense. The evidence was irrefutable. When the verdict finally came, it was in my favor. Not only did I retain ownership of the house, but the court also ordered my father to pay $210,000 in damages for the psychological and emotional harm he had caused. I'll never forget the look on his face, shock mixed with silent fury. It wasn't victory I felt in that moment, it was closure. For the first time in my life, the truth had been acknowledged by someone outside my family. Justice had finally spoken on my behalf. Afterward, I made the hardest but most necessary decision of my life. I cut all contact with my parents and Victoria. The bond had long been poisoned beyond repair. The endless cycle of manipulation, guilt, and favoritism had drained me of too much already. Logan and I vowed to move forward together, leaving the wreckage behind. The house, once a source of conflict, became our sanctuary again. We painted the walls, filled the rooms with warmth and laughter, and began to build a future untainted by the past. Yet, the scars from years of emotional wounds didn't fade overnight. There were nights I'd wake up crying, haunted by the memories of my parents' cruel words and my sister's cold indifference. But Logan was always there, steady, patient, and kind, reminding me that love could be gentle, not destructive. Months later, as the court dust settled, another chapter of my life unfolded, one that finally brought light after years of darkness. Logan and I got married. Our wedding was small and intimate, set in a serene lakeside venue surrounded by friends and a few of Logan's relatives. The air was crisp, the sky clear, and for the first time in a long while, I felt peace. As I walked down the aisle toward the man who had stood by me through every storm, I knew I was making the right choice. No one from my family was invited. It wasn't out of spite, it was out of self-preservation. I couldn't risk their toxicity tainting the most important day of my life. I wanted that day to be pure, filled only with genuine love and support. A few days later, an email from my mother appeared in my inbox, a lengthy, guilt-ridden letter full of half-apologies and emotional manipulation. She wrote about her heartbreak at not being invited, claiming she deserved to witness her daughter's wedding. I didn't reply. Some silences are necessary for healing. My father remained silent, but Victoria didn't. Word of the wedding had reached her somehow, and her reaction was explosive. She saw the court ruling and my new marriage as personal attacks, as if my happiness existed solely to mock her misery. After the lawsuit, my parents' finances had suffered significantly. Victoria, used to being indulged, began demanding money they could no longer give. The cracks in their golden family image widened. Then came the devastating news: Jameson left her. Not long after, she suffered a miscarriage. Though it broke my heart to hear, she immediately turned her grief into hatred, blaming me for everything, for Jameson's departure, for our father's debts, for her pain. Her anger was relentless, and I tried to ignore it, not realizing how far she'd go. About a month into our marriage, Logan and I decided to take a peaceful evening walk around the neighborhood. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges. For once, life felt calm. That tranquility shattered the moment I saw her. Victoria. She was standing at the end of the street, her hair disheveled, her eyes wild with rage. I froze. Her presence there felt wrong, heavy, charged with something dangerous. Before I could even ask what she was doing, she screamed my name, her voice cracked, raw with fury, and charged toward me. In her hands, she held a thick iron rod, glinting in the dying sunlight. Everything slowed. I barely had time to react before the first blow struck my abdomen. A burst of blinding pain radiated through me, knocking the air from my lungs. I stumbled back, gasping, but she didn't stop. The second strike landed on my leg with a sickening crack, sending me crashing to the pavement. I heard Logan shout, then chaos. Neighbors screamed. Victoria's voice cut through the noise, venomous and hysterical, accusing me of ruining her life, of taking everything from her. Each word was a dagger, each swing of the rod a culmination of years of resentment that had finally erupted into violence. Logan tried to de-escalate, but it was too late. My father puffed his chest, accusing me of living beyond my means, and declared that, eventually, this house would belong to Victoria anyway. The next few moments were a blur. I remember shouting, his finger jabbing in my face, Victoria's smug expression, then something in me snapped. I shoved him back, my voice cracking as I told him to get out. He lunged forward, and suddenly we were struggling, years of resentment exploding in a physical fight I never imagined would happen. Logan pulled me back while James called the police. My mother screamed. The sound of sirens filled the distance, growing louder until flashing lights spilled through our windows. Minutes later, Both my father and I were in handcuffs, standing side by side, breathless, defeated, and furious. As the police car doors closed behind me, I stared out at the house, the one I had built, the one they tried to take, and in that painful, surreal moment, I realized, I hadn't just fought for a house, I had fought for myself, for the right to exist without being overshadowed, dismissed, or controlled ever again. I never imagined a family visit would end with flashing red and blue lights, the cold bite of steel handcuffs around my wrists, and a silent car ride to the police station. Sitting there, my chest still heaving from the altercation, I stared out the window, trying to comprehend how everything had spiraled so far out of control. Then, darkness. When I awoke, I was in a hospital room, the rhythmic beeping of machines filling the air. Logan sat beside me, his eyes red from crying. My body felt foreign, wrapped, bandaged, aching in places I didn't know could hurt. I tried to speak, but my throat burned. "You're safe now," Logan whispered, taking my hand gently. The doctor soon entered, explaining that I had sustained multiple fractures, broken ribs, a fractured left leg, a shattered right arm. He said I was lucky to be alive. Bystanders had restrained Victoria and called the police just in time. Victoria was arrested at the scene and charged with assault with a deadly weapon, but even after being taken into custody, she reportedly showed no remorse, insisting during interrogation that I deserved it. She told officers that I had destroyed her life and that she had only been seeking justice. Hearing that broke something inside me. I had already mourned the family I thought I had, but this time, I was forced to accept that the person I once called my sister was gone, consumed by envy and bitterness. The recovery was long and agonizing. Weeks blurred into months of physical therapy, sleepless nights, and painful reminders of the life I used to have. But through it all, Logan never left my side. He handled the legal proceedings, coordinated with my lawyer, and made sure I was never alone, not even for a moment. When the trial began, Victoria pleaded not guilty. Her defense claimed she had suffered emotional breakdowns caused by family turmoil. They tried to portray her as a victim of circumstance, but the evidence was undeniable. Witnesses testified, the medical reports were graphic and conclusive. Watching her sit across the courtroom, emotionless, refusing to meet my gaze, was harder than I expected. The real heartbreak came when I saw my parents sitting behind her, nodding in silent support. Even after everything, they still chose her. That betrayal cut deeper than any wound Victoria had inflicted. After weeks of testimony, the verdict was delivered. Victoria was found guilty and sentenced to 4 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 3. The courtroom fell silent as the judge read the decision. Victoria didn't cry, she didn't even flinch, she just stared ahead, as if she had already left her body behind. My parents walked out without a word, their faces as cold and unreadable as stone. As I sat there, tears streaming down my cheeks, I felt something unexpected, not triumph, not satisfaction, but release. The battle was over. The ties that once bound me to their cruelty had finally been severed. Now, 2 years later, the physical wounds have healed, though faint scars remain as reminders of what I endured. The emotional healing is slower, but it's happening, one day at a time. Therapy has helped me rebuild not just my body, but my sense of self. Some days, I still wake up with the echoes of old pain, but most days, I wake up beside Logan, grateful for his love, for survival, and for the freedom I fought so hard to earn. The past will always be a part of me, but it no longer defines me. I've learned that family isn't defined by blood, it's defined by love, respect, and peace, and at long last, I have all 3.